Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. We're really excited for today's event. We're really lucky to be joining up with the team from Hearts in the Ice. We're joining Sunniva Sorby and her expedition partner, Hildas Strom. For those who are just tuning in for the very first time, they are overwintering in Svalbard, in Arctic Svalbard. So that's going to be 9 months. They're going to be living in a little cabin. And what's really special about this expedition is that they are the first women to ever do this without men. So it's a really exciting expedition. And along the way, they're going to be doing all kinds of citizen science work, looking at things like microplastics, things like technology, taking all kinds of different measurements and such that they can then share with scientists along the way through their time. So this is our very first connection with them from Svalbard. So as you can imagine, it's not easy to get a signal. So they're joining us via the magic of satellite phone right now. So Sunniva and Hilde, it is so great to have you joining us live from the cabin today.
Well, it is super exciting for both of us to be sitting here with one headset between us, trying to get through with video, but satellite phone is the way it's going to be today, but super happy to connect with everybody. Hi, everyone.
All right. You know what? Let me turn the microphones on because it's fun to be able to hear the classroom. So boys and girls, get loud. Say a big hi to Sunniva and Hilde.
Wow, that's so cool. Hello. Wow, we don't get noise like that up here at Bamsebu, so that's awesome.
We've got a great group. They're pretty darn excited to be joining in
today.
But I have to know, you've been up for a few days now. How's it going so far?
Yeah, I'll just start us off. This is Sunniva. We've been here for just over a week. We had a 100-passenger ship with family, friends, sponsors, science partners, NASA, Scripps Institute, Norwegian Polar Institute, UNIS, BCIT from BC. It was overwhelming, and we even had a special concert on board with the Joss Stone. And they dropped us off, and then it's just the two of us and our dog, our 2-year-old Malamute, Etra. And we've been trying to get settled in, and today's a really super overcast day, so hard for us to actually get through with a video link. But we're very, very happy to kick off our monthly series with all of you that are joining us from across Canada and the U.S. right now for this, topics that are so important for all of us as it relates to climate change that is just an ever-pressing issue for all of us. I'm just going to pass it really quick, Joe, to Hilda to share a little bit about how it's going for her.
Yeah, hi everyone, Hilde here. And we've been here now for a week, and we are, just today, we've had some experience with plastic from the ocean. We had a huge reindeer, a male reindeer with a big antler, and he actually was carrying around with a big fishing net in his antler. And it's possible for us to help him, actually, because he's too big for us to handle in order to release him from the net. Hopefully he will survive, but we don't know that. And beside that, we will open up stomachs for seabirds and look for plastic. And we are also gathering water samples with microplastic. So that's what we just now for the first week are doing when it comes to the plastic.
All right. And I think it's important we give the classrooms an idea of just how isolated the two of you are right now. How far are you from the nearest other settlement or other cabin? How far out are you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the ship that dropped us off left the town of Longyearbyen, which is like Long-Ear-Bien, in Svalbard, and it took the ship about 5-6 hours to get to our location. We're 140 kilometers away from the nearest neighbor, so if we're out of any food like potato chips or anything like that, we're out of luck. We are completely. It's just the two of us and our and Etra. We have to problem solve everything. We had to bring all our provisions, equipment. Water is a big thing for us. We have to collect logs that have drifted in from Siberia so that we have a heating source for the winter. So yeah, Joe, we're way out there, 78 degrees north. We're in between the North Pole and the northern tip of mainland Norway, if all of you want to take out your maps.
All right, amazing. And I think another important question that we could ask right now is I know the two of you have a history exploring polar areas, both north and south. What was the inspiration behind this particular expedition?
Yeah, I'll share 2 seconds about it, and then I want to pass it over to Hilde, because this the fact that we're up here at the Scapper's cabin, which is called Bamsebu, up in Svalbard, is really connected to her 25 years up here. But you know, Hilde and I are two women, just a pitch over 50 years old, and you know, we're like all of you school kids in your classrooms. We care about our backyard and our natural spaces, and it's changed. Nothing's been the same, especially for us for the last couple of decades. And because we've experienced so much of that change, we wanted to do something about it. So we're using our place here at Bamsebu as a platform for engagement and understanding what in the world is happening. And I'll let Hilda share just a little bit about the background for her, because it's a very personal thing.
Hi guys. Well, I came to Svalbard in 1995. That's 24 years ago, a long, long time ago. And what I saw then was a cold winter, ice on the ocean, a lot of polar bears wandering around on the ice, and no greens, no trees, of course. And but what it started to change 10 years ago, very much so. The temperature rised. There was no longer a lot of ice on the sea, but more ice on land, actually, because it rains during the winter. And it was called Arctic desert up here. And now it's a lot of rain and snow coming down. And in 2015, a big avalanche came down in the village of Longyearbyen in my town. And that avalanche took 12 of my neighbor houses. And inside those houses, it was 17 people, and 2 people died, a 2-year-old girl and a 43-year-old man. And I was very much involved in that rescue operation, and that sort of turned this whole thing around. I've been wanting to do an overwintering since I came in 95, but in 2015 and with this avalanche, it certainly got very personal to me, and I had a purpose. And when I met Sunniva and shared these thoughts, we shaped out the hearts in the eyes and the reason for us to be here for 9 months, to communicate with you guys and try to find solutions, or at least things we can do in order to try to do something with the climate change.
All right. Well, it's an absolutely amazing undertaking, and it's just getting started. I'm so excited for the events that are going to be happening every month as we catch up on different topics and hear more about life at the cabin. What I think we should do right now is meet Melanie. So
thanks.
Hilda and Sunniva, I know this satellite time is expensive. So if you did want to log off and say pop back in around 12:30 to 12:35-ish, then we can do a few questions. But I'm going to introduce Melanie and turn things over to her for a little bit now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, boys and girls, we have a third special guest visiting with us today. Really excited to introduce you to Melanie Bergmann. So she's a marine ecologist with the Alfred Wegener Institute. So she's coming to us from Germany today, and she's recently written a pretty important paper about microplastics being found in the snow in the Arctic. So we're talking about substantial amounts of plastic fragments that were found in an area of ice flows called the Fram Strait. So this is an unpopulated expanse of ocean between Greenland and the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard. So Melanie, it's so great to have you tuning in live to spend a little time with us today.
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Melanie Bergmann, and I work at the Alfred Wegener Institute. And yeah, my background is deep sea researcher. Basically, we run an observatory of Svalbard, and basically we can I show PowerPoint slides here?
Yeah, absolutely. If you hit the little share button at the bottom, it should give you the option to share your PowerPoint.
Okay. Right. Can you see it?
Yeah, it just loaded up.
Great. Yeah. So what we do in the Fram Strait, which is this part of the ocean between Greenland and Svalbard largely, is that we run something that we call an observatory. It's basically different locations which we visit every year with our research vessel, which you can see here. It's called Polarstern. And we do lots and lots of different measurements, and basically by comparing measurements from different years, we hope to be able to assess the changes induced by global climate change. And my part in this time series, as we call it, is the use of this camera system, which you can see here, which we tow behind the ship along the seafloor. And when I was hoping to find nice creatures like this Dumbo squid, which you see here, basically to see if there are any changes in the life on the seafloor over time, I actually saw more and more of this stuff that you can see here. So yeah, basically a lot of litter. And then I did a rigorous analysis of all the photographs that we had taken since 2002. And yeah, what you can see here basically is that we found a big increase over that time frame, and litter actually doubled on the seafloor. So why does it matter? Well, the problem with it is it's not just not nice to look at, but as we've heard earlier, it causes entanglement not only in marine life but also in land animals. So these organisms or animals can suffocate, starve, or it can cause injury over time. Then, of course, a lot of animals also eat this debris. We've heard that these seabirds will also be analyzed up in the cabin in Svalbard. So that's really good because it can cause internal injuries or just lead to the feeling of these animals that they're actually full when they're actually starving. Then, of course, there's a risk that some animals actually settle on this plastic, which can drift with the ocean currents over very, very long distances. So then these animals on these objects can drift for a very long way as well and come to new areas and then maybe conquer these new areas and change the animal composition there. So that's a threat. And then of course there's also the risk of lots of toxins that can actually absorb onto these plastics, and similarly also germs. And that may cause disease to marine life or even to us if we swallow it. And then, of course, there's the big thing with microplastics. So I don't know if you've heard about these. Basically, microplastics are those plastic particles which are smaller than 5 millimeters. And these are either produced in this size from the start, or they are kind of generated through a degradation of big products. So for instance, you may have left something outside in the garden for a long time and have realized that after a while it becomes brittle, and if you touch it, it defragments into little pieces. So it's the same in the ocean, with all the sunlight that's there, the seawater and the wave action, and on the beach then it's you get mechanical abrasion with the sand, and this makes this material more brittle, and then it fragments into small pieces. So then if they are smaller than 5 millimeter, we call them microplastics. And the problem with these is that they're so small that they can be eaten by a much wider range of animals. Even very small animals like this guy here, which is copepod. It's a little zooplankton creature at the base of the food web, and of course, if they eat these microplastics, and then these get eaten by fish, and the fish gets eaten by whales, so it can enter the food chain and accumulate. So that's a problem with microplastics. And then it also causes problems to animals on the seafloor, but we don't really know very much about that. And of course, there's an economic cost as well, because it's not good for tourism, for instance, or for ships which are operating in the ocean and get maybe also in their propeller entangled, and then there needs to be rescue operations. So all this then causes cost of around $6 billion. So that's also important. And of course, we're talking about global change here. It's the whole process of actually producing this plastic, but also a lot of the time it is burned afterwards, not recycled, but burned. So this actually also causes a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, and so it's also important in these terms not to use so much plastic. So this is just quickly to show you that the production of plastic is growing all the time. So we're at 350 million tons roughly at the moment. So this is quite a lot, and about 4 to 5% of this amount ends up in the ocean. But the problem is, if we know that this amount gets into the ocean, but we don't actually know where most of this ends up. So to tackle this problem, we've basically started to look at all the different spheres in the ocean to find out where all this plastic goes. We're looking at the sea ice, we're looking at the snow, we're looking at the water column, which is the water body between the sea surface and the seafloor, and also at the seafloor with all these different instruments. And then we compare the amounts that we find in these different spheres, and then we can say, oh, there's a lot more in this part, so this is probably where there's a big sink where most of it is likely to end up. And through repeated measurements, we hope to see if there's any temporal trends, if it's becoming more or less. So this is what we're doing. And the first thing I would like to share with you is some work that we're doing with tourists, basically citizen scientists that we've teamed up with. And they do cruises around the coast of Svalbard, and with sailing vessels like this one, for instance. And we've told them how to do certain beach cleanups along a certain 100 meters, and then they weigh everything and put down notes of what they found. And here you can see the first thing that they did. And the main take-home message really is that it was the amounts that were found were actually in range with amounts that we recorded or that were recorded by colleagues on Asian beaches. So it's actually quite polluted, despite the fact that nobody lives there. So this is actually quite strange, of course. And if you look at the different sources, what we found that about the vast majority of the things that we found were from fisheries, like we've heard before with the reindeer And the fishing net, yeah, that's because there's a lot of it drifting to the beaches, and then the reindeer go there to graze in the intertidal zone. And if there's a fishing net, then they become entangled too. And one year we also we asked these tourists to put everything into a big pack, like this one here, and send it to us to Bremerhaven. So after a few months, it arrived, and we sorted everything into different bits and bobs, and looked for any signs, imprints, labels to find out where these objects actually came from. And that was really interesting exercise, because yeah, as you would expect, the majority, about 40%, was from what we call local sources, from countries like Norway and Russia, which even have settlements on Svalbard. But 43% were actually from European sources. And of course, that's much further away. I mean, even 7% from Germany. So that was really kind of unexpected. And 9% were from really distant sources like Brazil, Canada, the US, Argentina. So that was really that just shows how far these things can drift in the ocean. Yeah, and we also asked these people to share any photographs of interactions that they saw with marine or with life as such. And here you can see what, one of the reindeer that had actually died as a result of entanglement with a fishing net. And here a seal which has a rope around its belly, and that can cause really severe wounding when they grow over time. Polar bears are also interacting with litter, and here you can see an Arctic tern with which cannot feed anymore because it's entangled line in its beak. So yeah, it does even the stuff on land creates harm with the wildlife. What we also did is that we did surveys from the ship to basically count any objects that were floating past when the ship was moving. And surprisingly, the amount that we found was also very similar to what we have in the North Sea, which is, of course, much more populated than the Arctic. And now we come to a part that you may not be so familiar with, which is basically the deep ocean floor. So we basically looked at more images from other stations from our observatory, for instance, here up in the north and in the south, and look for a longer time period. And what you can see basically is that this increase that we observed initially is carrying on. So litter is accumulating more and more on the deep sea floor, and it's the same in different places as well. So yeah, it looks as if the deep sea floor is a sink for marine litter. Also, if you compare the amount that we found on the surface, which I just showed you one slide before, and on the seafloor, it's about 300 times more on the bottom. So yeah, this is probably where it all goes in the end. And what do we find there? Well, more than half of the stuff that we found was plastic, but glass was also quite prominent, and especially in the north. And this is important because it shows you, because glass is of course quite heavy and sinks directly. It means that it was disposed of right there. This is stuff that has not drifted for a long time with the ocean currents. It was disposed of in that area. So it must have come from ships, basically. And how does it affect marine life on the seafloor? More than half of the stuff that we observed was actually in some way interacting with the plastic. A lot of the times it was entangled, as you can see here in these kind of three-dimensional structures like sponges and coral. So it was kind of entrapped. But quite often we also saw things growing on this plastic. For instance, here you probably cannot see it. These are small anemones, sea anemones growing on this plastic bag. So yeah, these were the main kind of things that we saw. So basically, we made a budget of all the different spheres that we looked at, and what came out was that the highest amount that we found were actually in deep sea sediments and also in the sea ice in terms of microplastic. This is where we found really, really high amounts, also in the snow. So yeah, these if we're coming back to the original question, where does it all end up? It looks as if the deep sea floor is the main thing. And how does it all get there? So here you can see basically if you release any plastic in this region where it will go. I can go back, and basically you can see how it distributes to the north from Europe, and yeah, it's basically likely that anything emitted in the UK or in northern Europe would end up in the Arctic within 2 years. But there's also been a report of a buoy that was lost, which made it to the Arctic, to Svalbard, within 62 days, so 2 months. So, I mean, this is, of course, is a big object that's traveling faster, but yeah, it can get there very fast. And so it comes from, a lot of it comes from Northern Europe with the main current, and may actually build up to what has been suggested, another of these accumulation areas. They're often called garbage patches. We don't really like this. We scientists don't really like this term, but yeah, this is what it could become over time. And how does all this stuff get there? Well, it could be that it comes from also from increasing local emissions, because of course I told you that we found quite a lot of glass there too. So basically here I've plotted the amount of tourists that were visiting the area between 2000 and 2014. And you can see that there's been a huge increase of people visiting Svalbard over time. And the same is true for the ships calling at the harbor of Longyearbyen. There's also a big increase in the amount of ships. And the third thing which you can see here is actually the number of fishing vessels which are operating in the area, which have been observed by the Coast Guard. And yeah, similar here, there's been a big increase, and also there's been a change from Norwegian now to primarily Russian ships. So these kind of changes in shipping and tourism in the area could also contribute to this increase in litter that we see. Another thing is that plastic may also get there with the Arctic rivers, because a lot of water is actually entering the Arctic Ocean from Siberia, for instance. It's about 10% of the global river discharge, so that's really a lot. Even if these is quite a remote area, it could still carry a lot of microplastics. And yeah, it could also come from the Pacific and then travel to the south where we work. And of course, yeah, because this is supported by ice, but it's taking too long. And another thing, it could be caused by atmospheric transport, because as Joe mentioned earlier, we also looked at microplastic in snow, and we found huge amounts. So anything that you find in snow must have been in the air before, because it entraps the particles, not only microplastic, but also microplastics when it's snowing, which is in the air. So yeah, that's also probably an important pathway. So to sum up, in a nutshell, plastic accumulates on the deep sea floor and in the sea ice. It was found in all the spheres that we studied, and was in similar amounts than in more urban areas. Yeah, there was a big increase over time on the seafloor. And atmospheric transport could be an important pathway. Yeah, if you want to find out more, we wrote a book that you can look at. It's free for everyone to look at. And also we created this online portal called Litterbase, and basically we transcribed scientific information into big maps. So these maps show you where scientists have recorded litter or any kind of impacts on marine life. So yeah, what can we do? The main thing really is that we need to reduce the plastic production. That's really what we have to turn off the tap. And then, of course, there's also, and to do that, we need, political intervention, incentives, levies, penalties. It could help to develop truly degradable polymers, something that really falls into into not just microplastic, but carbon polymers. Then we need for those packaging materials that we really need, we need to close the loop and have a recycling system instead of burning or exporting our litter. Then we need improved waste disposal systems and sewage works, promote environmental educations, for example, through beach cleanups, and of course have higher penalties for intentional littering. And last not least, would help a lot if we had effective international agreements to reduce marine litter inputs. So with this, I would like to thank you.
All right. Awesome, Melanie. Thanks so much. And I love your shirt. Really cool shirt, Exploring the Arctic. I like it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today, because we think of the Arctic as this place that's so far away and that we're probably not having that big of effect, but the research you're showing clearly is that we're having a large effect, and it's getting higher and higher over time. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. So we do have Sunniva and Hilda back with us. How's it going, ladies?
Hi there, we are back.
All right, perfect. So I'm gonna start introducing some classrooms, and then classrooms, if you want to ask about the cabin and life up there, or if you want to ask more specifically about plastics, we have Melanie who can answer some questions, and we can throw some to the cabin as well. So let's get meeting some of those live classrooms. We're going to start off. We're going to go to Mrs. Decker's group. They are in Fort Collins, Colorado. Let me get their microphone turned on. Where is it? I think this one's it. How we doing, boys and girls? All right, who's got a question?
That's great.
Wait, which one?
Does it take a
Yeah, go ahead, we're ready.
long time to get used to the darkness of winter? And what is the temperature like right now?
All right, maybe we'll throw that one your way, Hilda.
Can you repeat that, please, Joe?
Absolutely. She was wondering
The question?
what it's like right now. Has like the longer darkness of winter started? And what's the temperature like?
Yeah, the temperature is around 0 and has been a little bit back and forth now the last 2 weeks. We had snow already in August, and
but now it's actually a little, it's around 0 and a little rain in the air. And we're soon getting into the dark season. So we're preparing for more than 3 months of complete darkness.
All right. Mr. Kozazinski's group, they're hanging out with us in Canton, Michigan. Let me track down their microphone. There it is. How we doing, Michigan? Good. All right, who's got a question?
I know you have seed samples in a seed vault. Have you ever been there, and how many samples are there?
Okay, so just let me double check that question. You're asking if they've been up to the Arctic and they've seen a lot of samples. Like, how many samples have they collected?
More specifically to the seed vault in Svalbard.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Sunniva and Hilda, have you guys been to the seed vault?
Yes, I've been into the seed vault, and it's actually more than 2 million different seeds inside that seed vault.
Wow. Melanie, have you ever been to the seed vault?
No.
All right.
I'm mostly there on the ship.
And I've never been into the seed vault either, so.
All right, so 1 out of 3 have been to the seed vault. 2 million seeds. That's pretty incredible. All right, let us jump to our next classroom. This time we're going to go to Winnipeg, Manitoba. We've got some grade 5, 6s hanging out with Mr. LaChance. Let me get that microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, Winnipeg?
Great.
All right, you sound good. Who's got a question?
How do microplastics get in the air? How do microplastics get into the snow? Does that mean we're also breathing it?
Oh, Melanie, did you get that one?
Yeah, I did get that. Thank you. That's a very good question. We don't actually really know that. From the kind of plastic that we found, we suspect that it could come from car tires because you know that your dad probably has to change the car tires every 2 years or something, depending on how much you drive. And that's because, of course, the plastic becomes loose over time when you're traveling so much. And yeah, it's going somewhere. So it goes into the air, into the dust, and we find it as microplastics. And it could also be a source of this stuff that we found in snow. Another thing, we found quite a lot of particles which were like paint or varnish. And first we thought, oh, that's a little strange. But when you think about it, a lot of the surfaces that we have are actually covered with paint or varnish. For instance, ships are to protect them from organisms and the weather. Cars have polymer or plastic-based paint. Even houses have that. Offshore platforms. So basically a lot of the surfaces around us are covered with plastics these days, and then you have air and wind blowing towards them all the time, and over time the material suffers and particles become loose, and then they go somewhere. And that's the air. And that's just a few examples. But yeah, this has been the first kind of study of its kind. So we have to do a lot more research to really figure out how it actually works.
All right. And Melanie, just as I'm looking at your screen, do you mind, up near the top should be an option to stop the screen share, and that'll bring you back full screen for us.
Ah, sorry.
No worries. There you go. And we can see your t-shirt better. So that's perfect. All right, awesome. Well, let's jump to our next classroom. Mrs. Spears' group is in Vernon, British Columbia, grade 5, 6s. Let me turn their microphone on. There it is. Oh, and actually, Mrs. Spear, your microphone's being tricky today. Do you mind turning it on for me? There they are. How's it going, BC? All right, we're ready for you.
What's the biggest plot of square kilometers of plastic that you've ever found?
The biggest?
Yeah, he's wondering what the biggest area of plastics you found maybe on your research so far.
You mean the biggest size of any kind of object that we found?
You mean the area?
Like the area of like the size, like how big would be like the most plastic in one area?
I think there was a net on Svalbard, which was probably about 2 meters long, something like this. I would think so. That was pretty big.
Yeah, and he's also wondering too, can you give us an idea of the size of the area you're exploring when you're taking the samples?
Yeah, so that's it's about 100 meters in length, and the width of a transect is about that changes. It depends a lot on the beach. Actually, it's difficult to say, but probably about 300 square meters, something like this. Sometimes it's a narrow beach, then you cannot do very wide survey. Sometimes it's a very wide beach, and then it can do 500 meters. So it differs.
All right. Let's jump to our next group, Mrs. Becker's group in San Diego. Let me get their microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, San Diego?
Hi, I'm Prem. Is it possible to ban plastic?
It would be good if we could do that. And some countries are actually banning plastic bags. For instance, in Rwanda, there's a plastic bag ban. In Kenya, they're also banning a lot of plastic. And I think in India, they also want to ban plastic, but there they actually encountered some difficulties because they wanted to do it much too fast. So they basically struggled. So I guess as much as I would like to stop right here and now, you do need a transition, but I think we should really ban plastic as much as we could. I think there are probably certain things where we need packaging, maybe for example things like meat. We want to keep in plastic because it's for hygiene reasons and to keep them for longer, these things. But in a lot of materials, you don't need plastics. Why does toilet paper have to be wrapped in plastic, for instance? Why do batteries have to come in plastics? I mean, there's lots of products that don't need to be packaged the way they are today.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to pop.
And I just want to add one thing to that question, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this project that Hilda and I are doing, Hearts in the Ice, one of our challenges was to try to encourage all of the people providing us with equipment and provisions, which means a lot of food for 9 months, was to reduce the plastic that we were getting. And I have to tell you, it was really, really difficult. But I think like banning plastic is obviously one way to stop the use of plastic. But if we back it up, I think each and every one of us on this phone call can, take the conversation to a level like within our family where we look at how we use plastic and how we need it and find different ways to maybe even encourage. I know that there's a lot of grocery stores that have stopped using plastic covering for fruits and vegetables and things. So there are a lot of different dialogues that we can all have as citizens to actually encourage the people supplying the products to us to stop using plastic.
Yeah, totally.
All right, I'm just going to pop the microphone on in Mrs. Decker's class in Colorado. I can see someone right up front at the camera. I bet she's got a question.
Hi, my name is Bella, and how many animals do you see with plastic, like on the neck and somewhere on the body?
All right, maybe we can ask both groups that question. So Melanie, if you had to estimate, how many animals have you seen that look like they've been impacted by plastics, maybe something around them on some part of their body?
I haven't seen so much myself, because when I do these ship surveys, we don't see so many animals, because we're looking onto the surface. I may see a whale in the distance, but that's about it. And I see them far away, so I couldn't really tell anything. So what I have seen on the seafloor, of course, what I showed was things like sponges and animals like that. And there, about half of the plastics that I saw were kind of in some form of contact with animals. But this is not, it's not like a seal or anything. It's these critters, invertebrates.
Yeah. And Hilda and Sunniva, how about the two of you? Have you encountered much in your travels?
Yeah, I'll just start us off and then I'll pass it to Hilda. But just today we saw that reindeer that we mentioned at the beginning of the call with a rack of what looked like some plastic netting around its antlers. So that couldn't have been a more real-time, timely example. And then, of course, we've seen a lot of plastic washed up on the beach and surrounding area. But I know Hilda's had some encounters with some seals, so I'll pass it over to her.
Yeah, I've seen, so every summer we see either alive or dead reindeers with big fishing nets in their antlers. And also I've seen a seal with also some sort of net around its neck. And I've seen pictures of a polar bear with that was marked through their ears and had hanging out some plastic attached to that. And also we see a lot of dead seabirds up here, and they eat, as I'm sure Melanie told you, they eat the plastic and they starve out of starvation. So yeah, I see a lot of impact of the plastic to the animal life around here on Svalbard.
Yeah. And I'm just noticing, it looks like Melanie's pulling up her screen. She had a screenshot earlier that showed a lot of those pictures that tourists have taken on their various expeditions. So there it is there. You can see that there is, it's quite an impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's devastating, actually. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is such a neat connection, having the two of you in Svalbard, having Melanie joining us in Germany, classrooms joining us across Canada and the US. It really is amazing what we can do with technology. Before we wrap up for today, Hilda and Sunniva sent me a video, a little 40-second video of them from the cabin saying hi. So I think I want to play that really quickly, just because it would be nice to see who we've been chatting with. So just bear with me for one moment while I get my share screen ready. QuickTime player, that should open.
And Joe, I don't know if you have our voice on, but we have to apologize to you guys when you look at us, because there's no running water and no electricity where we are, so we haven't showered in a few weeks.
We understand. We understand. So my video should be up on the screen now. You should be able to hear the sound.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining our call today for Ocean Plastics, the first in our monthly chats with all of you school kids from around the world and exploring by the seat of your pants.
And we open dead seabirds and look for plastic.
We have, speaking of plastic, we actually found a reindeer, very large rack of antlers with what looked like some knitting attached to its antlers, and just today, just a few hours ago. So really sad state of affairs, the impact that plastics have on living mammals, and seabirds and the such. So glad that you're all participating in this chat today. Speak to you soon.
All right. Very cool. That should bring me back from the screen share. And I think we might have just lost those little like pops you heard, I think was the satellite system going out. So we've just lost Hilda and Sunniva, but that's okay because we're wrapping up the call anyways. Melanie, thank you so much for stepping in and joining us today. The research you're doing is so important. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let me turn the microphones on, boys and girls. Let's get loud, a big goodbye and thank you. And we'll sign off for today. So here we go. Microphones are on. Melanie, thank you so much. We are signing off for today.